Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei was grandson of white dragons? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the Hikori Takeo for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. Let's start this video. You know what's worse than dying with a plant tub landing on your head? It's being completely aware of how you are born. And trust me, being born is not an experience I, or anyone for that matter, will want to repeat anytime soon. One moment, I'm standing over my dead body in the form of a spirit unseen by everyone, the next moment I'm in some kind of abyss with a strange feeling of weightlessness. And right after that, I'm getting squeezed out of me like an orange. Of course, I started panicking and struggled against the squeezing sensation, but sadly, I didn't have the strength to resist it for more than a few seconds. So I gave up and let it do its thing, as something in the back of my mind was telling me to wait and simply rest. I did, and it was almost as if something within me just clicked into place as the light once more filled my vision. You know those self-insert stories where the shitty authors write down things like seeing their mother's face first thing after being born? They are wrong. You don't see your mother's face, no, what you see is blurs. Everything is blurry and your surroundings constantly shift, and you're unable to make sense of all the forms and different colors that you will see, only managing to confuse yourself even further. That's what I had to go through, and I'm not ashamed to admit that I cried. My eyes hurt, I was scared and lost, that wasn't anything unusual, no, being reborn is. It probably didn't help that the retarded doctor and nurses didn't bother covering my eyes from the light above me, and my hearing was off by a mile. Everything was muffled, every sound came as if I was underwater, my whole body was shaking as I desperately tried to make sense of what was happening and grasp at least a minimal sense of what was around me. I don't know how long I was crying, but fortunately I managed to get a hold of myself and calm down after I felt a strange comforting warmth around me. Instinctually I knew I was safe within this warmth and nothing was going to harm me, so I fell asleep to recover my strength. It was a joyous occasion. One where you would be crying in joy, smiling and laughing in happiness as a new member was just added to your family. Yet, one Yukihira Hinode could not do any of them as he held on to his sleeping grandson, gently rocking the infant. He stoically watched in silence as his daughter came out of the bathroom dressed in a business suit. It hasn't been an hour since his nameless grandson was born, yet here his daughter was, dressed in a business suit ready to head off for a meeting, as if she didn't just give birth to her flesh and blood. Well, she is a dragon, half or not. I don't care what you name that thing in your arms. She coldly started fixing her tie, ignoring the gasp that came from his personal attendant, who was a fellow mother like her. I won't be returning anytime soon, so do as you wish with it. His blood boiled in rage hearing his flesh and blood say something like that toward her very own one, but he calmed down and just nodded. Good. This is a farewell. The next time we'll be seeing each other will be when either of us will be dead. Take care. With that, his daughter opened a portal and walked through it, not even once looking back at her son. Yukihira silently stared at the spot where his daughter was mere seconds ago and couldn't help but sigh in a tired manner. Ever since his wife and, or in his daughter's case, her mother, died, the girl hadn't been the same. Days passed by and his daughter closed herself off from everyone, barely talking anymore, always busy with school, studying magic and part-time jobs that she had no need to take, with a considerable amount of wealth he, and an extension she, had. He had tried countless times to reconnect with her, but the girl was stubborn, not moving an inch from her refusal to open up to him. And before he knew it, she was going abroad for higher education with a scholarship in hand. A couple of years pass by with no communications whatsoever, and suddenly she shows up at his doors, very close to 9 months pregnant, going into labor 2 days later. And now, she's gone again, leaving behind her son to him, who was not even a living being in her eyes. And even though she said they would be seeing each other again when either of them had died, he knew she didn't mean it. If he died, she would outright ignore the calls that would go to her with the news of his death, and should she be the one to die before him, then no such news would reach him. Well, she said he would name him whatever he wanted and do as he wished, no. Then he will do so. Yu-chan. He looked down at his side to meet the crimson eyes of his pa, Satsurakawa, the Yuki-onna Yaokai who had always been there for him since his youth. He shook his head and softly smiled at the sleeping infant in his arms. How does Haru Hinode sound, Surani? His pa blinked and looked at his grandson, her frown giving way to a smile. Spring sunrise, huh? Tsu-chan will love him. I'm glad. He kissed the small forehead of his grandson and held him close to his heart. He won't make any mistakes with him, not like he did with his daughter. He will make sure that his grandson will grow into a fine young man, or rather. The dragon. My vision and hearing soon became better. I can make out things with perfect clarity within what I can assume to be just a day and hear everything with no issue even sooner. Hearing and understanding, however, are not the same. All the language that I can hear around me is familiar, I cannot understand it. I never studied Japanese language in my previous life after all. Sure, I watched loads of anime, read mangas and LNs, but that doesn't mean I learned Japanese, as the animes were English subbed, the mangas and LNs were English translated. So no, even as the crimson-eyed woman with a unique mix of colors for hair is cooing at me, I do not understand what the woman's miniature version or the crimson-eyed tall tan man with icy blue hair and goatee are talking about. But I am sure about a few things. 1. This woman is not my mother, and neither is her miniature version my elder sister. 2. My parents are not for some reason involved in my life, and 3. The tan man with icy blue hair is my grandfather, if my interpretation of Aji-san from the woman's mouth is correct. Awesome, not even 2 days have passed, and I already know that I'll be lacking quite a few things in my new life. Subarashi. Oh, well, even if I will be lacking them, it doesn't mean I can't live a good life, at least, better than the previous one. Hopefully these people won't turn out to be an abusive bunch, I'll trust them for now, but one wrong move and I'm outta here, leaving several dead bodies behind me. Fun. Rusama. Harusama. Wake up. Arusama at 7 in the morning. I groggily opened my eyes and stared up at the smiling, youthful face of one Sararakawa, my personal attendant and my older sister in everything but blood. Good morning to you too, I yawned and snuggled into my blankets, closing my eyes. Now shoo, I wanna sleep more. I don't have to look at her to know that she's pouting. But Harusama. Your training begins today. Then there's your school too. You need to make friends too, you know. NNNG don't want. I curled up and dug myself further into my blanket. You. MMH. ZZZZZ. Harusama. Hearing that tone, I opened my eyes and felt a shiver crawl up my spine. Please don't make me cover you in ice. I sat up on my bed and scooted away from her. Alright. Sheesh. I'm up. Winter's barely passed, don't do that. Good morning, Harusama. Did you have a good night's sleep? Until you came to wake me up, yeah. What was that, Harusama? I didn't quite hear you, can you speak louder please? Yes. I had a very good night's sleep. Slept like a log. Excellent. You cannot grow up into a healthy young dragon if you don't get proper sleep. I shrunk and nodded. Why yes, that's right. By the way, is breakfast ready? Please go, you're scaring me. It will be ready in a couple of minutes. The 19-year-old chirped. Do you need my help getting dressed in Harusama? And no, I'll be fine getting ready by myself. Hey Harusama. How bold of you. What? To think that you still need my help getting ready. Stop blushing and wiggling with hands on your cheeks, you're 19 for crying out loud. I said I'll be. Please stop looking at me so coldly with that creepy smile on your face. Hahaha. How silly of me. You're only 6 years old. Of course you will need your beloved, wonderful, young and beautiful pa to help you get dressed, right? I whimpered. Why yes ma'am. Greetings readers who are wasting their valuable time reading this, I am Haruhinode, a reincarnated soul, currently 6 years old physically and 24 spiritually. As you can tell from the above conversation, I am currently being molested by my pa with the excuse of getting dressed up. You must be confused, right? Why am I, a dragon, being so subservient to my pa? It's simple really, I am only 1/4 dragon and 3/4 human. My mother who can die in a ditch for all I care was half human and half dragon, while my father, sperm donor, no one knows who he even is, was a human. From today onwards I will start going to school and training to get a hold of my dragon powers, which might be a few considering my heritage. My pa, the older sister in everything blood, Sararakawa is a yokai, in fact, her kind of yokai is one of the few that are my favorites. A Yuki-onna. She wasn't bragging about her being beautiful. Her eyes and hair are what would immediately catch your attention if you spotted her in the corner of your vision. Her eyes' iris is a striking yellow with 3 black rings surrounding the pupil. Her hair is a unique mix of 3 colors. Blue, black and white. She is 19 years old and has trained in hand-to-hand combat, along with several kinds of magic, with ice magic being her strongest and primary one. Therefore, I know that I'm weaker than her, and resisting her display of affection will only result in me being turned into a popsicle, once is enough as it is. My dragon heritage won't help, not until I've mastered everything that it grants me. And even if I do master them in the next few years, I lack something she doesn't. Experience. She has combat experience that is required of her due to being my pa, which also amounts to her being my bodyguard, so yeah, there's no way I'm winning against her. Although, I don't mind being treated like this, not the manhandling or molesting, mind you. Rather, how she wants to make everything easier for me, technically spoiling me so to speak, which is rather nice compared to the circumstances I had in my previous life. She takes her duties as my pa very seriously. Whenever I would need something, she would be right there by my side with it, as if reading my mind. It was creepy at first, there was lots of complaining, I had even spoken with my grandfather and his pa, Sarara's mother, about it. The latter only encouraged her daughter in making me a good-for-nothing like she proclaimed to have done with my grandfather, despite him being anything but that. My grandfather on the other hand. You get used to it. He had said that with dead eyes and curled in a smile. Seeing that I started to question who exactly was the head of the household, but sadly, women that we approve of tend to be the ones with power despite us officially being the ones with power. When I realized that Sarara won't stop at nothing to look after me and take care of my needs, I gave up. Women can be stubborn like that. And as I had mentioned above, she's stronger than me, and that doesn't help the situation at all either, because as my pa it's her duty to protect my life with hers, and she is determined to be stronger than me, not only for myself, but also so that she can carry out her duties. And against that determination, I have nothing. So I just decided to roll over and go with the flow. And even if I do surpass her in the future, I would still cower in front of her. It is the unfortunate fate of men in the Hinode household. Grandfather said, red. Deadpanned as much. And I don't have it in me to change it, as it often leads to me being spoiled, so why? Once Sarara was done dressing, molesting me up, we headed off towards the dining hall. Arusama, today is your first day at school. Are you excited about it? Not sure. Are you nervous, Harusama? I nodded. My previous life hadn't been the best one, so I'm not confident with my people skills. And in this second life, growing up in a humongous castle with only 3 living beings around me with the staff being automata created by my grandfather, I didn't exactly have that many people to talk to. It doesn't help that the castle is situated on a hill past a slightly dense forest away from civilization. Moreover, my grandfather, Yukihira Hinode, had made quite a lot of enemies in his youth, with allies being only a few. And those allies are so high up in the totem pole that coming down to help him will get them in trouble, so he always refrains from asking them for help, not like he had ever needed to. It's because of his enemies that no one, him, Satsura or Tsurara wanted me to go outside of the perimeters of our territory. The school that I'll be attending is one that's close to our property. Naruyuki Elementary School in Naruyuki Town, which is in the northeast of our territory. It's your average ordinary public school, one that would help in blending in with the masses, but the problem is, my unique hair color is bound to get more than a few looks in my direction. So it wouldn't be easy to blend in, but the least we can do is try. Sure, I can be homeschooled in the safety of the castle, but the problem is that I'd be detached from society and will be lacking friends. Moreover, I can't go around the world making connections, getting jobs from different factions as a freelancer or ally myself to one faction without having the skill to properly start a conversation. That's why I'm reluctantly attending a school. It's a necessary evil. It's understandable that you will be nervous, but don't worry, Harusama, we will be on the lookout for you and make sure no harm comes to you until the day you can soar the skies freely. Thanks, Rara. Fu, you flatter me, Harusama. Soon we arrived at the dining hall. Sarara scurried forward and pushed open the door for me. I nodded in thanks and walked in, taking a seat opposite to grandfather and Satsura with Sarara sitting beside me. Good morning, Yukijai-san, Satsura-san. My grandfather's name is Yukihira Hinode. He is at the moment 63 years old, but looking at him you wouldn't believe that. He looks like a tall middle-aged man with tanned skin, mid-back length icy blue hair, goatee and eyes. Personality-wise he is similar to Ramani Archiman from FGO, except he isn't lacking in self-confidence and isn't cowardly. Yukijai-san looked up from the newspaper he was reading and nodded in our direction. Good morning, you two. You're just in time for breakfast. Satsura yawned. Morning, you two. Mother, don't tell me Yukihira Dono had to wake you up again. Satsura gave my frowning pa a goofy smile and a thumbs up. Yup. As is the norm. Have some shame and take your duties seriously, would you? Nah, I wouldn't me if I did that. Now, you two, let's eat breakfast. Harukan and Sarara-chan have to leave for school within a bit under an hour. What was the name of that school again? Nagabumi Elementary School. That's way off mark. It's Naruyuki Elementary School. Sarara corrected. Yes, same thing. Elementary is completely different from elementary. The OOOHA CHANUCHAN Su-chan is bullying me. Both I and Yukijai-san ignored her. We know better than to get in between Sarara and her target of ire. Satsura Kawa looks exactly like her daughter, or is it the other way around? Except she has crimson iris, and instead of having blue, she had amethyst for hair color with black and white highlights. Her personality is different from her daughter, or more like they are complete opposites of each other. Satsura is free-spirited, lazy, laid back, and likes to give nicknames to friends and family. She is also a bit of a lewd character, dropping innuendos every chance she gets, especially in front of her daughter and me. She also likes annoying her daughter with her antics. That's why these two are often seen quarreling, or more like Sarara ranting off at her, while she tunes out the younger Yuki Onna. Sarara on the other hand is a cheerful and dedicated yokai. She takes her duties way too seriously and is yandere-ish when it comes to me. Ironically enough, even though it was Satsura that taught Sarara about her duties as my pa, the older woman herself doesn't give a shit about them, content with lazing around. It doesn't help that Yukijai-san doesn't protest and disapprove of her mannerisms, then again, he did tell me you get used to it. Ah-chan, don't worry about school. I'm sure you will do just fine. Alright. Besides, I'm confident that Haru-sama will breeze through everything. I'll try. Hopefully I won't have to invest in aspirins. I realized I was born in high school DxD, the world that bid farewell to logic and physics, when I prodded Yukijai-san into telling me more about him. Turns out he is the magician counterpart of the Vasco Strata and is known as one of the strongest humans. My grandfather, Yukihira Hinode, was born to a magician couple who worked in the magician organization that had Mephistopheles as the chairman, Grasshopper. He and Satsura were Mephisto's personal students and in a short time had become two of the organization's top magicians. Soon after that, with Mephisto's recommendation, the two had gone around the world doing jobs as freelancers. It was sometime later into his life as a freelancer that he met the person who would later become his wife. She was his generation's White Dragon Empress and had been passing by when she smelt him and challenged him to a duel. He had refused and Satsura even threatened to freeze the girl solid, but she didn't listen. She followed the duo everywhere they went, constantly bothered them until Yukijai-san finally accepted and barely won against her. They had hoped she would leave them alone after that, but she kept on challenging him. Sometimes she would win, sometimes he would. Satsura even gave up on stopping them from fighting, instead stuck to containing the destruction. And before they knew it, they had become a team of three and things happened, he and she fell in love, blah blah blah. They even had a child, but grandmother Riza eventually had to fight a rival, the Red Dragon Emperor. Juggernaut Drive happened, she won, and died not long after the end of the battle. My mother had become whatever she is today after grandmother's death, leaving me in Yukijai-san's care not even an hour after my birth. How does that factor in me being a dragon? My grandmother awakened divine dividing when she was dying after Kakebiel's goons attacked her and her family. At her dying moments, she wished for power, for vengeance against those who have wronged her, and to avenge the death of her parents. Albion heard her plea and had asked even if it means to give me your body. Power doesn't come without a sacrifice. She had answered with a yes and Albion had given her the body of a dragon, one made with his own flesh and blood, making her his daughter. That's how I am a dragon and alleged descendant of the heavenly dragon of supremacy, Albion Gwyber. Dragons. They are concepts of reality made manifest. Elements of the world brought to life. Solitary by nature, dragons tend to keep to themselves for the most part, except for those with their personal hordes or families. Though, even a single dragon can prove to be a fatal danger if ever properly enraged. I paid rapt attention as Yukijai-san lectured prudently and pointed out diagrams within the worn text laid between them. Before I start training with my dragon powers, Yukijai-san had made it clear that as a dragon, I have to learn about the history of my race. That's why we are currently in the massive library going through books on my race. I'm assuming that we don't generally live in large groups. I'll admit that being regarded more as a dragon than human by my own family was unnerving at first, but now I take pride in being regarded as one. I mean, what's cooler than being a dragon? Dragons are the incarnation of power and as mentioned above, concepts of reality made manifest. How is that not cool? Moreover, Albion is my great-grandfather. As I said, dragons are solitary creatures. They have no uniform system of governing, nor do they generally acknowledge any sovereign state. Though a few will politically align themselves with the governing powers of their home. I cast my eyes back to the book and studied the more generic forms that dragons are known to take. Do dragons live in the human world anymore? Dragons that aren't me or that woman? As far as I'm aware, no. There aren't any dragons living among us humans other than you. They have made their home within the unclaimed territories of the underworld. Some have even aligned themselves with the rule of the four Satans. Most prominent of them is the former Dragon King Tannen. Dragon King? I ask despite knowing the answer, can't pretend to know things I shouldn't. Yukijai-san reached out and turned the pages of the book until stopping on two specific pages showing a hexagram composed of 6 magic circles. Each circle is of different colors and marked by a single word written in a different language. I recognized 5 of the 6 being Hindi, Chinese, Arabic, and 2 with Norse runes, but the last one escaped me. Dragons, despite their independent nature, have a social ladder. Low class, as in newborn dragons, mid-class are the ones that are the dragon equivalent of human teenagers, and high class, that is the dragon equivalent of human adults. After them are the dragon kings, then the heavenly dragons, and finally, the dragon gods. Is great-grandfather a heavenly dragon then? That's right. Albion Gwyber is known as the heavenly dragon of supremacy, the white dragon emperor, while his rival is the heavenly dragon of domination, the red dragon emperor. Don't know what those words mean, but okay. And dragon kings. Yukiji-san chuckled and continued. The Dragon Kings are 6 individual dragons who have marked a place in history through their power and legends. He tapped the purple circle with the Arabic word. Tannen, the Blaze Meteor Dragon, for reasons that are his own, he gave up his status as a Dragon King and became a devil. Despite his reincarnated status, he is highly respected in the underworld and is somewhat of a celebrity among the children. I blinked in fake confusion and asked, we dragons can change our race? No. Devils have found out a way to turn every race but the gods and Buddhas into one of their own. That's something we will cover on a later date. He moved to the next circle, the grey one with Norse runes. Jormungandr, also known as the Midgard Serpent or the World Serpent, from the Norse pantheon. He is the largest dragon known to exist and the 3rd strongest dragon king. Similar to Albion, he too is a poison dragon, with his venom being right after Albion's own. Not even a Hydra's venom can get anywhere near the level of Jormungandra's own, or Albion's for that matter. Next is also another one with Norse runes but gold-colored. Fafnir, the golden dragon monarch, the gigantic dragon. He is very unique in that he has an entire treasury of weapons that he uses in combat and is also known to curse people by descending into their dreams. Ah, forgot he can do that. He is the 2nd strongest dragon king. Vivid green with Chinese followed. Yulong, the mischievous one. He is quite young compared to the other dragon kings and is known to be a pacifist, rarely venturing forth from his lair. The Hindu one is black, and I can already guess which one it is. Vritra, the prison dragon, the dead drought dragon from the Hindu faction. He was slain by Indra centuries ago, and later his spirit was sealed into a series of sacred gear, which is another topic for another day. While he is considered the weakest of all dragon kings, his wide range of abilities mark him as one of the most dangerous. And finally, he tapped the Azure one with a soul language I didn't recognize, but I can make a rough guess about the dragon. We have Tiamat. The mother of all dragons and the Chaos Karma dragon. She is the oldest and most powerful dragon king. Not only that, she is the only one of the old ones alive and a former primordial goddess. Goddess old ones, this is news even for me. Yes. The old ones are beings who have existed since creation itself, before humanity even showed up on the map. Tiamat is the only one alive. She was the goddess of Salt Sea and the embodiment of primordial chaos. She is the one who gave birth to not only gods, but also the 1st generation dragons who had poison for blood. How did she become a dragon? If she gave birth to the 1st generation dragons, shouldn't that mean she's the strongest dragon? Why is she a dragon king? Yukiji-san sighed. That's something no one knows about Haru-kun. Tiamat goes by the title of a dragon king, but why she does so is unknown. Where does she reside? He looked at me like I lost my mind. I don't know the answer to that, but why do you want to know where she lives? I want to know why and how she came to be a dragon king instead of a dragon god or something else entirely. If you go to her asking that, she might kill you. Then I'll just give her the sad puppy eyes. He shook his head and smiled in amusement. You do you, maybe in the future you will encounter her and actually get the truth out of her. Either way, she is the strongest dragon king at the moment and will remain so until Fafnir defeats her. Press X for doubt. I see, and the dragon gods. There are only 2 of them that exist. Great Red, also known as the Dragon of Dragons, the Apocalypse Dragon and the Dragon of Dreams. He is currently the strongest dragon in existence. I gave him a faux dubious look. Great Red. That's what he is known as, he never gave out his true name. He shrugged. The other one is Ophis, the infinite dragon god, the Ouroboros dragon. Weirdly enough, unlike other dragons, Ophis doesn't have a gender. Sometimes it shows up as an old man, sometimes as a child of either gender, etc. Ophis is weird. Ditto. From what I remember, canon began around 2008, so that would mean that issei was born between 1990 to 1992 and I was born in 1986. That means I can avoid the canon cast and live a peaceful life reincarnation. This means I will have 0 chances or reasons to be around Kuo town, the town southwest of our territory. Since I have no reason to be around Kuo or in it, I will have no reason to get dragged into the mess that is canon. I can go my merry way, get myself a good education, then move on to freelancing, make a good name for myself, earn loads and settle down with a family of my own. Hahaha. With my foolproof plan, I won't have to deal with Kakabiel, Chaos Brigade and Hero Faction etc. Since I didn't have any need to prepare myself for canon, I didn't have a time limit to train myself into becoming as OP as possible. So my training was done with relative ease, at a slow and steady pace. Mastering the powers granted to me by my dragon heritage and refining them took longer than I would have liked, but since I didn't have any rush, I didn't complain. Goku had emphasized that rest is an important part of training. The reason he was stronger than Vegeta after training in the hyperbolic time chamber was because Goku rested and spent the remaining time before the Cell games with his family. Goku's body got the time to recover from the year-long training he put it through and adapt to the power increase, while Vegeta's didn't. So following Goku's mentality, I made sure to train myself in moderation. Sure, I had to go beyond my limits, but it wasn't anything intense. If I was at LVL 10, I trained myself to skip LVL 11 and 12, jump to LVL 13, instead of LVL 20 at the end of the training session. I didn't want to be a one-trick pony or dragon, so I made sure to learn a few magic, sword fighting and hand-to-hand combat. But who would have known that I wouldn't be learning any normal sword fighting or hand-to-hand combat styles. Zanjutsu and Hakuta, the former for sword fighting and the latter for hand-to-hand combat. And you know what's scarier? My teacher Genji Goryu is. He looks like Yamamoto from Bleach around the time before the first Shinigami Quincy War took place. What's worse, he was just as strict as Yamamoto in training me, making me empathize with Shunsui and Jushiro. At least Sarara was there to comfort me after every training session as she was his former student. As for my magic training, I didn't bother delving too much into it, instead I focused on mastering only a select few including elemental magic. My education wasn't rushed, but I did skip a grade in middle school and high school, and finished university when I was 21 with majors in history and modern literature, and minor in mathematics and English language. After that I went around the world on a trip with Sarara for sightseeing, freelancing and bounty hunting, until a year later when my beloved grandfather accepted a job on my behalf without even telling me. "You did what?" I hissed at Yukijai-san, who was sweating nervously with both hands raised up in the air. "I got a job for you as a teacher at Kuo Academy." "Haha, don't worry. Kuo Academy has turned co-ed this year, so there will be both boys and girls. All you have to do is teach history and modern literature for 3 years, you can quit after that." I glared at him. "Did you even bother asking if I would actually want to teach a bunch of snot-nosed brats? Kuo Academy is an elite private school, the place where snot-nosed brats gather. Don't get me wrong, I have no problems with being a teacher. What I have a problem with is that you didn't ask me. Also, I neither have experience nor a teaching license. How do you expect me to teach a bunch of teenagers high on hormones without them?" Yukijai-san scratched his cheek and answered, "Well, I knew you wouldn't say no to becoming a teacher, so I contacted my friend and got you the job. I know you lack experience, but I'm sure you can do it. It's high paying too." As for the license, he opened his hand and a paper poofed into existence. "Here." I took a good look at the paper and realized with a deadpan look on my face that it was a legit teaching license that has an expiry date in 5 years starting from last week. I sighed and handed it to Tsurara for safekeeping. "Alright, fine. When do I start?" "Next month. You have enough time to look for a house to stay in for the duration of time you'd be a teacher." I dragged a hand down my face and sighed again. "For your sake, let's hope that I don't get my job duration extended, Yukijai-san." He gulped and I headed towards my room. "Get some rest after making 2 copies of that certificate, we'll be looking for a house to stay in tomorrow." "Understood, Haru-sama." Looks like whoever reincarnated me here has gotten bored of my life in the last 22 years and decided that no, I cannot stay away from the canon caste, so I will have to teach them if I can't be their fellow student. I don't have any problems with being a teacher. If it was any other school then I would have been fine, but no, it had to be Kuo Academy that Yukijai-san got me a job in. Ugh, just thinking of having issei as my student makes me uncomfortable. And the girls, oh the girls, they'll either go full feminist on me or ogle me to their heart's content. And honestly, I'd rather deal with a bunch of feminist idiots than deal with horny jail candidates. Then there's the biggest problem. Namely, the devils. Rias Gremory and Sona Citri will no doubt get a file on me the moment they hear my last name, and both will definitely try to recruit me into their peerages. I mean, my grandfather is one of the strongest humans, and the magician counterpart of Vasco Strada1. My grandmother was the previous White Dragon Emperor, and finally, I am a quarter dragon. Sure, I don't have a sacred gear, but having a dragon in a peerage, quarter or not, is far better than having a sacred gear wielder. I am practically a prime A5 meat free for the taking. I should have known everything won't go the way I want. Damn it all to hell. The Kitsune Yaokais are a powerful species. Among them, the Kyuubi are the strongest. Their fur, their bones, their flesh, even their blood are infused with Kai and mana, which makes them very potent magic reagents and catalysts that can be used for any number of spells, curses and rituals. In terms of mana, the only species that can confidently boast superiority over them are just the dragons, which are accurately described as power incarnate. However, they are creatures that lived for combat, their species evolving over time for that singular purpose, until they were capable of fighting from the day they are born. Even the weakest dragon has power equivalent to that of a mid-class devil, meaning that newborns are no easy targets, especially if they are being watched by their older and far stronger family members. And in modern times at the present, dragons are practically non-existent in the human world, most of the surviving colonies moving to the underworld to live under the protection of the former Dragon King Tannen, the meteor flame dragon, who was reincarnated into a devil and now ranked as one of the underworld's most prized ultimate class devils. The chances of ever acquiring a dragon are about as good as a snowball's chances of not melting in the waters of Phlegethon, the burning river. That isn't to say the odds of acquiring a Kyuubi are much higher, considering the number of them alive today can be counted on one hand. One of them is the leader of the Kyoto Yakai, famed for being unparalleled in Yujutsu and a master of Senjutsu, but unlike dragons, Kyuubi and all Kitsune for that matter are not born battle ready. They have to train both their body and spirit to fully tap into the immense power within them. Misaka only obtained her current power from training relentlessly for several decades, and even now she has to keep up her training to prevent her body and spirit from atrophying. Hunu, the princess of the Kyoto Yakai and Yusaka's daughter, is as strong as her 10-year-old self would be and could not yet tap into even a sliver of her true power, barely able to conjure more than a few sparks of foxfire that will barely be enough to light a candle. The peak of her Yujutsu abilities is being able to hide her fox ears and tails in order to make her look like a human child, albeit one with an uncommon hair and eye color in Japan. She is practically a human child in terms of combat capability, and that makes her an easier target from a tactical standpoint. Even discounting magicians, there are plenty of twisted individuals out there who would love nothing more than to get their hands on a pretty little thing like her, whether they knew her true identity or not. Misaka was born in a much more turbulent and violent time, had been aware of the dangers to her since a very young age, and had trained from said young age to make full use of her innate power. In comparison, Kunu was born in a much more peaceful modern age and had lived a very sheltered life so far, kept away from the dark and gritty aspects by her mother. Misaka did not have a happy childhood, thus she did not want the same for her daughter, which led her to spoiling Kunu a good deal. That isn't to say that she blinded herself to the potential dangers to her daughter, which is why she assigned a full guard detail to her, consisting of only those she fully trusted. Unfortunately, her upbringing meant Kunu cannot fully comprehend the danger she is in simply by being born to her mother, and only sees her constant bodyguards as overbearing parenting on Yusaka's part, which leads to her constantly trying to sneak away from them with varying degrees of success. Her guards are trained to protect her with their lives and can spot even the slightest out-of-place detail, which means that her attempts to ditch them are often met with failure. However, the sheer imagination of a child cannot be underestimated either, which leads to the occasional success and subsequent panic from her entire guard details as they try to find her. Today is one of those successes. She has not only snuck out of the palace, but the Yaokai realm as well, reaching the human world. There are so many things she wants to see. She knows her way around Kyoto, of course. It's not like her mother confines her to the palace 24/7. On the rare occasions that she becomes free of any obligations as a leader, Yusaka will bring her out to explore the ancient capital. However, those trips are usually quick, and while she knows everything about the famous sites in Kyoto like Kinkaku-ji and Kiyomizu-dera, those are only small parts of the very large city. There are plenty more in the city and she wants to know everything. She has spent most of the day between sneaking out and exploring, but by lunchtime, she has been forced to acknowledge the enemy that is hunger. Unfortunately, in her single-minded quest to get away from her guards, she had forgotten a little something that is practically mandatory in the human world. Money. And this restaurant that she is now standing in front of is the only place she can think of for her favorite food. Tofu. But without money she has been led to her current conundrum. She has no money, which means she can't pay for a meal. And she is quite famished, as is the evidence of her angry growling stomach. Now she has two options as far as she can see. The first is to sneak back into the palace, grab her wallet and come back here. The problem with it is that her guards are definitely searching high and low for her right now. She has barely gotten away from them when they were at their usual level of attentiveness, so there is no way she can get in undetected when they are all at high alert. The second is to plead with the patrons to pay for her, praying they are kind-hearted enough to do so. The plan is undoubtedly feasible. She has the advantage of looking like a human child, a little bit of convincing act, and crocodile tears will turn the adults into putty in her hands. The problem with this plan is that she is a princess of an entire race for that matter. Thus she has her own pride of being one. Going with this plan means to forego her pride as a princess, and that is an absolute no-no for someone of her standing. But she is extremely tempted to do so, however under normal circumstances, she will never debase herself like this. Her, a proud Kyuubi even if she isn't as strong as one of her kind should be, and future leader of the Kyoto Yokai, begging mere humans for help. She will rather die than be forced to endure that shame. Unfortunately, this isn't a normal circumstance, for there is tofu at stake. Pride has to take a step back and give way to gluttony. So she swallowed her pride and rehearsed the lines she will be using on the next patron to enter the restaurant, preparing to eat her fill, and then disappear before the adults can bring her to the police station or something. Yet another problem reared its head. No one is coming by. She has been waiting and waiting, but not a single soul walked by. Heck, no one has even exited the restaurant yet. How can that be? It is lunch hour. This narrow street should be filled with customers all waiting to get their fill of tofu dishes before returning to whatever it is that they were doing. But against all reason, there is none. She waited for close to an hour, the angry protests of her empty stomach getting louder with each passing moment without sustenance, and she wanted to pull her hair out in frustration. She can't even leverage her position as the princess of the Kyoto Yokai because none of the all-human staff had any clue of the supernatural and did not understand the weight of her title. Now she wishes she had paid attention to those boring yujutsu lessons, just enough to cast a small illusion to fool the staff into thinking that she had paid her bill, but due to her lack of attention during the lessons, and thus without any training, she isn't even capable of something that basic yet. And even if she can, her mother will give her hell for doing such a thing in the first place and risking the exposure of their world to ordinary humans. No tofu, no matter how delicious they are, will ever be worth her mother's wrath. She can be downright terrifying when she is angry. Therefore, with a sigh and slump of her shoulders, Kunu began to trudge her way back to the gate of the Yokai realm that leads to her home. She is so hungry at this point that she doesn't care what she eats, as long as she can eat something. And just as she rounded the corner to return to the main street. She bumped into someone and fell on her butt. Hey there, are you okay? Rubbing her sore butt, she looked up to find a young couple looking at her in concern. The woman, judging by her appearance, Kunu can tell at one glance that she is a yokai, and judging by the cool air around her, she is most likely a yuki-onna. She is wearing a pretty furisude with a scarf around her neck standing behind her significant other who is crouched down to her level. He is a human, that much is obvious, but the air around him spoke of power. But that's not what got her attention. Sure, the air of power around him is tingling her senses in a very pleasant manner for reasons unknown to her, but that still didn't catch her eye. It's his hair, a shade of blue that she couldn't quite get a grasp on that caught her eye. His hair looked so soft she wanted to pet it, and the smell of the shampoo was very nice too. His facial features seemed to be a mix of Asian and European and matched perfectly with his hair, giving him an exotic look. Then there's his eyes, the same shade of blue as his hair that expressed his inner kindness and warmth. She feels like she can get lost in the warmth in those eyes of his and never worry about the world. Hey, are you okay? Please say something instead of sitting there. Are you hurt? Did you sprain your ankle? Want me to give you a lift home? Kunu blinked, snapping out of her stupor, hearing his gentle tone voice tinted in worry for her. Her cheeks burned as she realized that she had been staring at him rather rudely at that, worrying him with her silence, completely unbefitting her status as a princess. She should apologize to this kind young man for being so rude or her mother will never let her live it down. And just as she hastily stood up dusting herself to apologize to him. Ruel. Her stomach decided to protest again, this time being very much louder than the other times. An awkward silence fell upon the three of them as they stared down at her still rumbling stomach. Hungry? The kind young man offered with a soft smile. How shameful of her. This is unbelievable. I stared dumbfounded at the little yokai in disguise who is devouring block after block of tofu, packing them away like a champ. She has already eaten thrice the amount of food that Sarara and I ate combined and is showing no signs of stopping anytime soon. And with how much she has eaten, I can't help but wonder, where is all that tofu going? But more than that, I can hear my wallet crying. Sure, I had expected to spend a bit more money than I planned for lunch when I volunteered to feed her. But this with the amount of tofu's that she's devouring, I'm undoubtedly going to an ATM after this. As for how I found myself in this situation. I and Sarara came on a trip to Kyoto to relax here before I have to go teach 16-year-olds history and modern literature in Kuo Academy. Having settled down in a high-end inn, the two of us had decided to explore the ancient capital a little, and I would be lying if I said I'm only amazed. A bit of annoyance is thrown in too due to the crowd, but that's expected in a famous city like Kyoto. Then came lunchtime and we decided to stop by at a restaurant that wasn't crowded. And just as we found one, we encountered this cute little hungry yokai in disguise. And hearing that loud angry growl from her stomach, I couldn't help but volunteer to feed her, she is so cute. I even overlooked her rudely staring at me for her cuteness. Well, I still don't know what kind of yokai she is, I couldn't just ignore her, even if on the off chance she is not a kid, but a prankster taking advantage of my soft spot for kids, gleefully emptying my wallet. I had asked Sarara if she could tell what kind of yokai the little girl is, but the woman couldn't figure it out either. That meant this little one knew some sort of yujutsu to bypass the senses of a master like her. But now, I'm starting to realize that volunteering to feed her might have been a mistake, because now she is on her 7th plate of aburage after scarfing down her 4th plate of tofu hot pot. And the more she's eating, the louder my wallet is crying. I feel like I might start crying too. At least Sarara is trying her best to comfort me by rubbing my back. Then just when I thought she would be ordering more, she finally let out a sigh of contentment, making me hope that her hunger had been satiated. But that hope got immediately squashed. The most satisfying meal indeed. Kunu, thank you for your generosity. Can I cry? I want to cry. Really, I'm serious here about crying. Of all the people who I had to stumble upon, it had to be her. The princess of the Kyoto yokai. I couldn't even recognize her due to her looking so different in this timeline than her canon counterpart. And Sarara, please stop digging your nails on my back, you're starting to bypass my hero. Well, I couldn't just ignore how hungry you were now, can I? I answered, scratching my cheek desperately wishing to cry, and stop laughing, old man. You're not the one who's going to have their wallet emptied, get back to the kitchen. Kunu flushed bright red in embarrassment, and isn't that an adorable sight to behold? I am pertinent. Do not dredge upon a lady's past embarrassments. Such discourtesy is punishable by flogging. She cutely declared, rather rudely pointing a finger at me in outrage. She's lucky she's a child or I would have snapped that pretty little finger of hers. At least this confirms that she wasn't putting up an act before. Geez, I wonder how your parents would react if they found out you were being rude to the person who was generous and kind enough to feed you. I sarcastically said, rolling my eyes, taking amusement in her horrified face. Knowing how Yasaka is, I doubt she would be pleased with what her daughter did. And Kunu's face said as much. Beru-sama, you really should stop spoiling children like this. Sarara, I've lost count of how many times you've told me this, why do you repeat this? You know I can't help it. Unfortunately. But really, I don't know what kind of luck I have. The first yokai that I encountered had to be the second most important one in the whole capital, possibly in half the Japan that is governed by her mother. Thankfully this is still salvageable. Kunu doesn't seem to think of us as anything more than tourists of her city, though she might have realized that Sarara is a yokai, so I might be wrong. A human, I'm suppressing my dragon aura to not attract attention. Interacting with a yokai is definitely not a normal one. Once we part ways, I doubt we will ever cross paths again in the few days that we will be in Kyoto. The fact that she's here alone, without any guard or her mother, means that she sneaked out of the yokai realm. Therefore, the guards will double down in their attentiveness once she returns. Knowing that worrying about this won't get me anywhere, I sighed and gestured the old man for the bill, and upon receiving it. Beru-sama. I died a bit on the inside and can sense my wallet following my lead into the layers of despair. Let me see that. I numbly handed over the bill receipt to the princess and suppressed my urge to pop her skull, seeing the pity in her eyes and the patronizing smile that she curled into. Oh, you poor things. Sarara twitched. Is a paltry amount such as too expensive for you? My mother and I usually spend twice the amount when we dine here. The life of a peasant is difficult indeed. Well, sorry we don't grow money on trees. Fret not, for I am neither a thief nor an ingrate. Once I am able to, I will properly compensate you for what I have consumed. Why, you little. Settling the bill, the three of us exited the restaurant, definitely looking like a bunch of weirdos with our varying hair colors and clothing. At least, Kunu seems genuine in paying me back, so I suppose it is fine, and even if she doesn't, that's fine too. I'm not a peasant like Kunu assumes me to be. I've got loads of money in my bank account, those freelance jobs and bounty hunting paid a lot. Sarara too, and I doubt she will think twice before paying for me should I lack the necessary amount of money for something I wish to buy. I would return home to collect my wallet. Will you now? Wait here for me. I really hope she's being sincere or I might end up looking stupid, not to mention I will be wasting time that I could spend exploring more of Kyoto's sights. Then I sensed 4 Kai signatures closing in on our position fast. Sarara has noticed it too. If the guarded stance is anything to go by, Kunu on the other hand, seemed to be unaware. Are they her guards that finally found her after searching high and low for her? I and my paw looked up just to see 4 masked and white-robed kitsunes with each of them having 5 fluffy tails falling from above surrounding Kunu in a formation that is not reassuring at all. Sarara might have noted it too, and I doubt they are who Kunu thinks they are if the suppressed hostility is anything to go by. Also, they didn't bother hiding their tails and ears despite being in the presence of a human, even if a fellow yokai was by his side. And as I thought, they vanished in the next moment with Kunu making a surprised Pikachu face. But they vanished visibly, not from the spot they surrounded Kunu in. The thing is, I can sense and smell all 5 of them in front of me, even if my eyes are telling me they aren't there. Having a sixth sense is freaking weird. Beru-sama, something is wrong. Yeah, why go through the trouble of using a spell in broad daylight in front of a human who will no doubt notice 5 people vanishing suddenly? It makes more sense to simply act like her family members who had been searching for her. Something is definitely wrong here. They didn't even thank us for looking after her. Damn it, not the time. Greetings Kunu-heim, we have come for you. Kunu blinked in confusion as she stared up at the expressionless masks of the 4 Gobi no Kitsunes that appeared. Had her guards finally found her? How strange. Among the roster of her guards, she remembers only one to be a Kitsune, the rest being an assortment of powerful yokai, all handpicked by her mother. Did her mother send her personal attendants to bring her home? Feeling something was wrong, Kunu asked, "Who are you? Did Akasama send you?" She immediately regretted it, flinching as a palpable aura of rage manifested around the 4 of them as soon as those words left her mouth. "Do not associate us with you pretenders. Only one has the right to claim the title of the Kyuubi's leader, and that is not you human-loving fools. We serve only the true Kyuubi, Tamamo no Mae-sama." Old blood drained from her face. She knows who they are. She usually doesn't pay attention to her tutor's boring history lessons, but the history of the Kitsunes has always interested her. And what caught her undivided attention were the events surrounding the foundation of the formation of the Kyuubi clan, of which she is the heiress of. A few centuries back, when Amaterasu had formed the 2 Yokai factions, the Kyuubi clan was appointed the leader of the Kyoto Yokai, led by her grandmother who moved to unite all the Kitsunes under the clan's banner. While most Kitsunes weren't against this, some even welcomed the idea of uniting the species, there were others who had argued vehemently against it. They were against the idea of living amicably with the humans. To them, the humans were nothing but prey and tools for their entertainment. The thought of having to treat those humans as equals was gut-wrenching to them. It was an ideology that was uncommon among the Kitsunes even at that time. They certainly found humans amusing to play around with, but certainly not to the point of malice. The ideology of such was inspired by a single Kitsune. A Kyuubi who was already dead at that time, but the infamy of whose had spread even after and continues to thrive even now. Tamamo no Mae. She was an outlier even among her kind during that time. A Kitsune, a Kyuubi at that, who treated humans with outright disdain, actively sabotaging them in many ways when she was alive, most famously by posing as a beloved courtesan of the emperor at the time and abusing her position to subtly worsen the quality of life. That was until the legendary Onyaji, Abe no Yasuchika divined her true nature and led an army to kill her. Even then, she continued to haunt the plains where she had died as a cursed stone, the Sesaseki, releasing a poisonous gas that killed everything around it until a Buddhist monk exorcised her spirit and sent her to Yomi where she belonged. Although most of the Kitsune race held her in contempt for her actions, a select few revered her as the perfect role model for how a Kitsune should conduct themselves. The Tamamo loyalists and the Kyuubi clan clashed, but the vastly inferior number along with the lack of a Kyuubi on their side had seen them being quickly defeated, rounded up and imprisoned. However, a few had managed to escape, hiding in the darkest and most obscure corners of Japan, quietly spreading their ideology to any Kitsune that would listen. They were far and few in between, but the Tamamo loyalists are still very much an active problem with how they continue to poison the minds of the impressionable Kitsunes and drag the image of their race through the mud. There are even rumors of them converting a few members of the other yokai species, touting the idea of complete yokai supremacy over humans. And 4 of them are here, in Kyoto surrounding her. She understands that they are here to kidnap her, but how? Her mother's information network is second to none in Japan. If the Tamamo loyalists had settled a camp right in the heart of Kyoto, she would have gotten word of it within the day. The palace would have gone in complete lockdown, making it impossible for Kunu to have escaped the way she had several hours ago until they had been dealt with. No, that doesn't matter right now. She must return to the palace to warn her mother. So conjuring a small spark of foxfire, she lobbed it at the closest loyalist and broke into the empty street. The main entrance to the Yokai realm, an out-of-the-way torii behind the Kinkaku-ji, is too far for her to reach without being caught, but there is a secret entrance known only to a select few. She isn't one of them, but she had come across the entrance on the other side during one of her many failed escape attempts. If she can just get to it. HMPH. Was that supposed to be foxfire? Pathetic. Even a Nibi can do better than that. Has the Kyuubi lineage of the Pretender's bloodline finally waned? Is she even suitable for the ritual if she is so weak? However, before she could even take a step, a hand seized her by the hair, causing her to cry out as she was roughly held into place. No sister, it's not that the Kyuubi blood is run thin in her. The little runt hasn't even received any training yet. The ritual doesn't require a trained Kyuubi, simply one with latent power. We should be grateful to the pretender's uselessness in allowing this thing to run around the human world unsupervised like this. It just made our mission all too easy. So she isn't even considered a person now, and how dare they call her mother useless. Let's go. Even with the subversions that we planned, it's only a matter of time before that pretender and her dogs find out we have her daughter and come for us. We need to complete the ritual before they find us. Fear gripped her hard and tears welled up in her eyes. All this happened because of her willfulness. She should have never left the palace. She had to get away, but how? The vice-like grip on her hair is showing no signs of releasing her anytime soon, and with her meager physical strength and magical prowess, she has no way of fighting back. Is there nothing that she can do? Where are they taking her? What are they planning to do with her in that ritual? Will her mother find her in time? Will she ever see her mother ever again? One of the kitsunes placed talismans on the ground and channeled her kai into it, making a glow, showing the signs of activating. Hoping against all hope, Kunu desperately begged for someone to save her. Please. Anyone. Save me. Save me from them. Akaya-sama. Alright, that's enough of that. Rip. The illusion placed around them was ripped in two, revealing the culprit to be none other than the young man and his yakai companion. The very same young man who was kind enough to feed her, and the very same young man she was being rude and patronizing with. She should apologize. Wah! A sickening crunch resounded as the kitsune that was holding her by the hair got her skull crushed by the young man with a bare hand, staining her in the now dead kitsune's blood. Normally Kunu would have been repulsed at the sight before her, unable to digest it, but now she was awestruck by her savior, who, as if hearing her silent plea, once again came to her rescue. You. Sarara, hold on to Kunu for me, would you? Of course, Haru-sama. Kunu's shoulders were gently grasped by the cool hands of the young man's Yukiana companion. Come here, sweetie. Yukiana said gently, cleaning the blood stains and leading her away from the fight. But she can't let him fight them alone. He is a human. And they are kitsunes. Gobi no kitsunes at that. Wait. We have to. Don't worry, Haru-sama has this in the bag. She confidently told her, and Kunu felt obliged to trust in her. Filthy human. How dare you interfere with our sacred mission? You will pay to. You talk too much. A powerful slap from the young man resulted in the kitsune's head flying off of her shoulder with a neck. TCH. Another kitsune manifested foxfire, only to have the young man plunge his hand into her like pen through paper and rip out her heart effortlessly. The remaining one, the leader, trembled in fear as the young man's rage-filled gaze slowly drifted to her. The young man killed the three of her companions with boring ease, looking only further annoyed as one by one dropped dead by his hands. Kunu doesn't blame her. While she doesn't share the disdain for humans, even she can't believe what she's seeing. A single human defeating 3 Gobi no kitsunes with such ease will shock even her. The young man's gaze then landed square on the leader, and it was so menacing, her eyes rolled into the back of her skull, her mouth fell open as she started foaming, and proceeded to crumple to the ground, unconsciously urinating at the same time. Ugh, filthy. Kunu's attention snapped to him as he manifested a bowl of water and washed himself clean. Can't believe they were so weak. They were Gobi no kitsunes, for goodness sake. Gobi. They should have put up some kind of competition, but no, they had go out in one strike. Stupid Gobus. The last one outright passed out. He clicked his tongue and glared at the fallen kitsune, making it shudder in instinctive fear. At least we can interrogate this one. Then he relaxed and turned to look back at her with a soft gaze lined with worry and concern. Are you alright, Kunu? It took her a few seconds to realize the question was directed to her, and she flushed red in embarrassment. What was with her acting so out of character today? Why, yes, I am, thank you very much. She blurted out a jumble of words, all forms of decorum gone. Realizing this, steam poured out of her ears in shame as her saviors chuckled good-naturedly at her. Kunu Haim. Kunu and the young couple looked up to see a Tengu wearing a samurai armor with a katana sheathed at his left hip descending from the sky. Fortunately for her, he is someone she trusts, and she cheered in relief. Karasu. The Tengu that descended is the second son of the Tengu clan's current chief, a longtime subordinate of her mother's, as well as the leader of her guard's detail. Karasu was personally appointed that position by her mother, since he had served her for a bit over 2 centuries. While he isn't the physically strongest of her guards, he is extremely skilled, easily running around in circles around the rest during their training sessions. Being the only child of her mother, Karasu had always been the closest thing to an older sibling to her, though his overprotectiveness has caused no small amount of exasperation for her. Just like it will now. Taking one look at her saviors and the bloodshed around them, he misunderstood the situation and immediately drew his sword. Unhand the princess immediately, you ruffians. He yelled, taking a stance with the katana only amusing her saviors. Stop. Karasu. Sheath your sword at once. They saved my life. She commanded him hastily before a fight broke out. As skilled as Karasu is, her savior despite his human nature is equally as skilled as him. She doesn't know for sure who would win in a fight between the two of them, but she sure does know that she wants neither of them injured. Karasu paused, tension leaving his body and her savior relaxed. They saved you? Gunu nodded and pointed at the 3 dead kitsunes and an unconscious one. They were the ones who attempted to abduct me. They are Tomomo no Mae loyalists. Karasu let out a squawk of outrage as he glared at the unconscious kitsune and the dead ones. During the short war between the loyalists and the Kyuubi clan, the Tengu clan had already been one of their closest allies and joined them on the battlefield. They had won but not without casualties. One of which had been Karasu's grandfather. The loyalists are a very sore spot for the Tengu clan, and whenever news about the loyalists popped up, they would be the first to arrive on the scene. Karasu pulled out several talismans and threw them at the kitsunes. The dead ones were absorbed into them, while the alive one was bound with ropes of kai. It's come to think they actually dared to so brazenly enter our territory and make an attempt on the princess. Karasu seethed in rage, getting a nod from her and her savior. However, your safety is the most paramount now, Kunuheim. I will contact the others to secure the heathen. You must return to the palace immediately. There may still be more of them in the city. We will need to organize a search and purge. Gunu felt the Yuki Onna release her grip on her shoulders, allowing her to go to Karasu's side. The Tengu then turned to her savior and bowed. I apologize for my rudeness. My name is Karasu. Might I ask for yours? Her savior and his companion exchanged glances and shrugged. I'm Haru Hinode and she is my personal attendant Sarara Kawa. Karasu's eyes widened and he took a step back, squawking in shock. Hinode Kawa, are you by any chance related to Yukihira Hinode and Satsura Kawa? They tilted their heads in confusion. Yes. They are my grandfather and her mother respectively. Karasu gaped at them for a few seconds before shaking his bird head and bowing. My apologies for calling you ruffians, Hinode Dono, Ikawa Dono. Hinode Dono, Ikawa Dono, both of you have my gratitude. Might I ask you to stay around? I'm sure Yasaka-sama will personally wish to thank you and ask a few questions about the attack. Okay? Excellent. We will see you soon. Come princess, we must return to the palace and report to your mother immediately. Gunu nodded and managed to demurely glance at her savior one last time before leaving with Karasu at the nearest gate. As she reached the end of the street, her ears twitched as they faintly picked up her savior's words to his companion. Well, that happened. And then your leader arrived. I recounted the events of the attack to the guards who had just arrived to apprehend the single kitsune that I was forced to leave alive. The looks of awe being directed at me was probably tinged with a lot of skepticism, since all they have is my and Sarara's words on how I, a seemingly ordinary human, had effortlessly killed 3 kitsunes and knocked another one out, each of which were gobi with power that was more or less equal to a high-class devil. And Sarara's words didn't count much to them due to her being my pa. Of course she would do her best to make me look more than I appear to be. However, the 3 talismans and 1 bound kitsune, along with the testimony of their princess, seems to lend more than enough credence to my claim. I swear by the 3rd recount they wanted to hear it just for the sake of it. The 2 oni, one red and the other blue, seem especially excited by my martial prowess. Kitsunes, according to my knowledge, are creatures that primarily relied on Yujutsu and other esoteric powers, not physical abilities, but a properly trained kitsune, one with a modicum of skill in senjutsu, is still much stronger than a regular human. The fact that I took 3 of them out with 1 strike and the other with a glare speaks volumes of either considerate skill, strength or a combination of both. These 2 onis are probably just a step away from directly challenging me themselves. The sole kitsune in Kunu's guard details is chatting with Sarara, talking about girl things, if not, verifying my strength. But all these aren't that much of a concern to me, it's the reaction Karasu had at hearing our surnames. Could it be that Yukijai-san has connections in the Kyoto Yaokai faction? Or is at least famous here? That will actually explain why Karasu reacted the way he did hearing our surnames. And then there's that matter of Yasaka coming to personally thank us. Gunu is already different in appearance than her canon counterpart, far fluffier, cuter and prettier. Then what does that say about Yasaka? Before I can delve deeper into the metaphorical rabbit's hole, Karasu returned, dismissing the other guards who took the single kitsune with them. Thank you for waiting. Once again, my name is Karasu, the captain of Kunuheim's Imperial Guards. Once again, I thank you for saving the princess. No problem. I've done it once, I'll do it again. The Tengu chuckled. By that flippant tone, I surmise that you don't realize just the significance of what you have done today. Oh no, I'm well aware of what I did, thank you very much, but if you want to see it like that, then who am I to stop you? Had Kunuheim been abducted, her mother, the venerable Yasaka-sama, would have torn all of Japan apart searching for her, regardless of the consequences. No doubt about that. Naruyuki and our territory falls in Yasaka's part of Japan, so the chances of her flipping our home upside down to look for Kunu underneath it is pretty decent. As politically savvy as she is, there is nothing a mother would not do for her child. Needless to say, she would have incurred the wrath of many in the process and may have even started a full-blown conflict with other factions. Your actions this noon did not just save Kunuheim's life, but our faction as well. Karasu smiled at me. Which is why Yasaka-sama wishes to personally express her gratitude. You already said that earlier. While we understand your concerns, personally thanking us seems a bit overboard for us. Sarara nodded in agreement. I mean, we can't just sit by and watch her get taken away for some illegal ritual that is very likely to end up with her being dead, can we? That's very kind of you, Hino Dono. But what you did today is not by any means a simple matter to be thankful about through paper. Great. Just what I needed. Going from meeting the second most important yokai in this half of Japan to meeting the most important. It's okay really. The sentiment is enough for us. Worry not, Yasaka-sama is willing to come to you. In case you are worried about being involved with our matters more than necessary, then do not worry, for no one will know of this meeting outside of us. Yet you missed a bunch of lunatics skittering around in your territory. One cannot maintain leadership over half a country and navigate politics for centuries without learning the importance of discretion. I sighed. Fine, might as well get this over with. The Tengu chuckled. Thank you for your time Hino Dono, Ikawa Dono. Hamon Haru-sama. What's the worst that can happen? Kunu getting kidnapped in the middle of the night. Rest assured Hino Dono, we have tightened the security at the palace. There is no way anyone without authorization can enter or leave the perimeters. Kunuheim will not be repeating this mistake anytime soon. So she will do it again. I'll take your word for it then. Even though something is telling me not to. Thank you very much for your concern Hino Dono. Not many show concern as genuine as yours. Ah, we are here. Wait, this is the inn we are residing in. Karasu raised an EYEBROW at Sarara. Is that so? This inn's owner is an acquaintance of ours, perhaps you would like a discount. I shook my head. Yukijai-san had already reserved a room in this inn with discount, so there is no need for that. Very well. Karasu slid open the doors to the hall. After you. But the grimace I and Sarara walked into the hall and took our seats opposite to Kunu, and who I presumed to be Yasaka. Yasaka is seated opposite to me, while Kunu is opposite to Sarara, with Karasu taking a seat diagonally behind Kunu. Similar, but golden fur, different dress and without the two spirits. As I expected, Yasaka is vastly different in this timeline from her canon counterpart. She is taller than me, over 6 feet if I'm not wrong, with a voluptuous body and skin tone close to milky white, but slightly darker. Her hair of liquid gilt cascaded down her straight and poised back, her eyes shone like the sun, her facial features are both angelic and ethereal, and her are curled in a smile that looked both gracious and mischievous. Her eyebrows aren't those round things in canon, instead thin and long, and her eyes are a bit narrowed. She is wearing a scarlet kimono with white and yellow floral patterns and a golden obi. It took all my not to just stare at her. The tension in the room, empty aside from us, is so thick it is almost tangible. Yasaka initiated a small staring contest with me, and we held it for a minute or two, unblinking, while Sarara and Kunu nervously watched us. Karasu looked like he even expected it. Finally she broke the silence before it can go on any longer as awkward and oppressive. I welcome you to Kyoto, Haruhino Dono, Sarara Kawa Dono. I am Yasaka, leader of the Kyubi clan and the Kyoto Yokai, appointed by Her Holiness Amaterasu Amakami-sama to rule over the Yokai realm of western and southern Japan. She began, recited. Karasu has informed me of the situation. I thank you both from the bottom of my heart for rescuing my Kunu from those miscreants who dared to trespass into our territory. She bowed deeply with Karasu and Kunu imitating her and surprising me. I and Sarara hastily returned the bow. Please, no need to thank us. We only did what a decent person would do. It would have gnawed on our consciousness if we had allowed Kunuheim to be accosted in front of us. We've done it once, we will do it again. So please, no need to thank or bow to us. The thought alone is appreciated. Isaka took a good look at us before smiling. I see you take after your respective guardians. That we do. Only in a few aspects though. Also, please forgo the formalities. It makes me really uncomfortable. Just Haru and Sarara will do. Isaka chuckled and continued. Very well Haru Dono, Sarara Dono, you have the eternal gratitude of the Kyubi clan and the Kyoto Yokai for your actions. We will prepare an appropriate reward. I'm pretty sure I made it clear that we don't expect any reward for our actions, even if we didn't voice it out loud. I see, that is very gracious of you. Oh, but if you could. Sarara put her hand into my pant pocket and pulled out the receipt of the lunch, making Kunu adopt a hilariously adorable look of horror. Can you please pay Haru-sama back for what Kunuhai made on his tab? I doubt Haru-sama would have mentioned it out of his fondness for children, so I'm doing this in his place. Kunu was about to lunge for the receipt if the twitch of her body was anything to go by, but she was a little too late as Yusaka has already taken the receipt. After taking a quick glance at the bottom, she turned a highly unamused gaze at Kunu. Kunu, did you force these nice people to pay for your meal? A meal you weren't supposed to be having. The adorable little Kyuubi let out a tiny whimper as she quailed under her mother's palpable disapproval and proceeded to direct a teary-eyed look of betrayal at Sarara, who just shot her a grin of utter smugness. Kunu then gave the saddest puppy-eyed look at me, and I instantly caved in like wet paper, ignoring how Karasu clasped a hand over his beak trying his damnedest not to break decorum and dissolve into laughter. I raised a finger and nervously spoke up. In her defense, I was the one who volunteered to feed her. After her stomach growled like an angry dragon. Sarara snarked beside me making Kunu whine, turning red in mortification, while Karasu's shoulders were violently shaking. It doesn't help that Yusaka herself looked very amused with the situation. I see. Yusaka then gave a needlessly dramatic sigh and sent Kunu a look that practically screamed that they would be discussing this in further detail later before turning back to face us. I am very sorry for my daughter's disgraceful behavior. Rest assured that every yen you spent on her will be repaid. But I Sarara clasped her hand over my mouth and covered it with ice so that I don't speak any more than necessary. That's all we ask. Right, Haru-sama. I fearfully nodded seeing the cold smile directed at me. Then I believe that we are done were. We must return to our realm immediately. Capturing the Tamamo no Mei loyalist alive was an unexpected windfall. We have much to ask of them. Such as the location of their comrades for one. The loyalists have been a rather unsightly blight for a good long while now. We hope to finally excise them this time. I melted the ice over my mouth and added. If you need our help in anything, let us know. We are here for a week and we wouldn't mind helping out. Before she can refuse, Sarara sternly added, we insist. Isaka sighed and softly smiled at us. If you insist. Now Karasu will show you out. Thank you for coming. We bowed to each other one last time and were about to leave the room when I paused and added, I would keep my daughter with me at all times in this situation if I were you. Isaka, Kunu and Karasu blinked before the leader nodded with a rather odd gleam in her eyes. I'll take your words in consideration. Please do. But that we left the hall and just as Karasu closed the door we heard Yusaka speak very crossly to Kunu. Now, young lady, I do believe we need to have a talk about your conduct. As long as Yusaka keeps Kunu by her side, the latter will be safe and sound and hopefully none the worse for wear after the experience. It's over, there is no need to worry, as I'm sure Yusaka won't need our help in solving this mess. Or so I thought. We were startled awake by a loud pounding on the door to our room in the middle of the night, Sarara jolting next to me. Hino dono. Ikawa dono. Are you there? Hearing the panic in the Tengu's voice, I leapt out of my futon and opened the door to a heavily injured Karasu, who looked like he has just gone through hell and back. What happened to you? I exclaimed, immediately pulling him inside our room for Sarara to heal him, and I couldn't help the grimace noting his condition. One of his eyes is swollen shut, the other being halfway there. Several bald spots are on his head that look like feathers had been torn out in patches, and the skin beneath is an ugly red as if it was burnt. Trails of blood dripped from various places on his person, his beak chipped in several places, and his armor is basically torn to shreds. And the most telling is how low his kai is. Did he seriously come in this state? Just how bad is the situation? There's no time. We need your help, please. Kunuheim has been abducted. White-hot rage surged in me and I cursed. I had a feeling this would happen. I even told Yusaka to keep Kunu around her at all times. Did she not listen to me? Let's go. He led us out of the inn and down a side alley. Fortunately in the wee hours of the morning there is basically no one, or it would have been troublesome if people saw an actual Tengu, half dead on its feet leading away two youngsters to who knows where. Looking around to make sure we aren't being followed, Karasu extended a hand into the air and made a curtain-moving gesture. And much like a curtain, the air in front of us slid to the side, the drab scenery of the dark alley, giving way to a landscape of a much older period. Now we stand on a hill that overlooked the Edo period-esque city that served as the home of the Kyoto yokai. To my surprise, the mana concentration here is even thicker than it is in the human realm, and below us, all manner of yokai roam the streets, Nurikab, Kasa Abak, Oni, Ushi Oni, Futakuchi Ana and the countless local mythological beings that I read about in the books. Not wishing to waste any time I asked Karasu, can you fly? Why yes, thanks to your healing I can now, shall I lead you through the air? I nodded and ignoring Karasu's squawk of surprise as my dragon wings burst from my back, we followed him through the air covering the distance to the palace at a shorter time than we would have taken with the ground. It's a good thing we healed him as soon as he reached us, or we would have been running around the place to head towards the palace because of his injuries. Unfortunately, he had to be the one to come get us, since all the other able-bodied personnel are probably busy trying to track down the abductors and rescue Kunu. Upon reaching the palace at the top of the hill opposite to the one we were standing on, the Tengu lead us through the gates inside, where several strong yokai are barking out orders at the rest, causing a mad rush within the halls, so much that it is difficult to navigate our way to the throne room with so many of them in the way. But after much shoving, we finally reached the golden doors beyond which anger and desperation hung thickly in the air. Yusaka is highly aggravated as evidenced by her 9 luxuriously fluffy tails swishing around in an agitated manner. Catching sight of us, she hurried over. "Thank you both for coming on such a short notice." "It's fine, we volunteered, didn't we?" "Now, what happened?" Her beautiful features twisted into an expression of animalistic anger and a mother's fury as she hissed out, "Traitors. Spies in my own court. Cursed blackguards stabbing us in the back." "Allow me to explain." Karasu being the calmer one butt in. "After our meeting concluded a few hours ago, Yusaka-sama, Kunuheim and I returned here. Yusaka-sama left to assist in the interrogation of the loyalists that you left alive this noon, and after the harrowing experience, Kunuheim was understandably exhausted and retired to her room to rest. We, her guards, took turns standing watch outside the door while the rest patrolled the halls. Approximately 4 hours ago, while I was stationed outside Kunuheim's room with another guard, we were approached by 3 of Yusaka-sama's ladies-in-waiting, who wished to inquire on Kunuheim's condition, and I am ashamed to say that we let our guard down. We never imagined that there were loyalists planted in the palace. Of course it would be from the inside right when they will least expect it. The moment we turned our backs, they struck us down. When I regained consciousness, they were gone, and so was Kunuheim. Most likely, they panicked when they learnt that 3 of their comrades were killed and 1 was captured, fearing that their identities would be revealed, they made their move first. Thank you, Karasu. You should go and see the healers. Your wounds despite being healed are quite severe. But, I should also help look for Kunuheim. Karasu, everyone flinched hearing me growl. You have done more than enough. At your current condition you will not be much of help to us. Go and get yourself treated properly. Once you and the other guards have recovered, you may join us in our rescue effort. I understand. He bowed and took his leave, limping out of the room. So, any luck in finding them? Isaka closed her eyes with a dejected sigh and shook her head. No. Despite our tracker's best efforts, we have not been able to locate them. They were careful enough to not leave any traces behind, so we have no idea where they have taken my daughter. I'm sure they will eventually find them with enough time, but time is exactly what we do not have, not when we still have no idea what it is they are planning to do with her. Hearing that, Tsurara herself cast a tracking spell to look for Kunu. I'm afraid we do now, Yusaka-chan. An elderly voice interrupted, gaining all our attention. Nararian, that short stature, the oddly shaped head elongating backward from the face like a gourd, are enough hints for me to realize who he is. Isaka took a deep breath to calm herself. Allow me to introduce you to Haru Dono, Tsurara Dono. This is Nararian, leader of the Hyaki Yaku and sovereign of the Yokai in eastern and northern Japan. Nararian Dono was here to discuss diplomatic matters with me, but when Kunu was taken, he offered to help us extract information from the loyalist. As a master of illusionary type Yujutsu and mental techniques, there are none more suited for interrogation than him. Nararian Dono, this is Haru Hinode, grandson of Yukihira Hinode, and his personal attendant, Tsurara Kawa, the daughter of Satsura Kawa. They are the ones who saved my daughter earlier this noon during the first abduction attempt earlier. Pushing down my rage with a deep breath, I silently nodded in respect at the legendary Yokai. I already figured out that much. I must say you're quite the swordsman, lad. That surprised me. I knew master swordsmen can recognize a fellow swordsman at first glance, but never thought I would be on the receiving end of it. Thanks. Isaka understandably looked confused. I don't recall him ever mentioning about using a sword. Oh no, it's just my intuition. When you're as experienced as I am, these kind of things become immediately obvious. Any swordsman worth their salt will be able to tell. I would love to test my skills against yours, lad, but now is not the time for it. He grouched, tracing his fingers on the handle of the katana that was almost as big as him. Were you able to learn anything from her? She wasn't keen on giving it up, but I pried the details of the ritual they are planning from their dot. It's our worst fear, Yusaka-chan. They are going to resurrect Tamamo no Mae. I silently cursed. Reviving the dead, while not unheard of, is certainly possible. However, due to it being tabooed, no records or instructions on how to do it is supposed to have been destroyed. Isn't that a taboo? It certainly is, but I wouldn't be surprised if the loyalists have managed to salvage a destroyed copy or learn from foreign lands. They might have even managed to figure out a ritual out through trial and error. They've certainly been around long enough to do so. doesn't really matter. Point is, that's what they are planning, and they are going to use the little lady to do it. That anger I pushed down reared its head back again even more stronger than before, exploding out of me in the form of my white dragon aura, cracking the wooden floor beneath me. Peridono. Lad. They are going to use her as a sacrifice to resurrect Tamamo no Mae in her body. I growled out, reeling in my aura. Every resurrection rituals require specific reagents and living sacrifices of equal value to the one being resurrected. Tamamo no Mae was a Kyuubi, and to resurrect her, another Kyuubi must be used as a sacrifice, in this case, Kunu. Where are they? Where did they take my Kunu? Yasaka demanded, surely looking on the verge of a meltdown. Sorry, Yasaka-chan, but those four were just fodder following orders. They didn't know where their leaders are conducting the ritual, only that it's a fitting place, and that can be anywhere. The old palace where Tamamo no Mae posed as a courtesan, or the plains of Nabu where she was slain, or the place of her birth. Without knowing how the loyalists think, it can be anywhere in Japan. Then, there's really nothing we can do but wait for the trackers to locate them. Will they even make it in time? Just as she started losing hope, my pa's voice prevented her falling into the pits of despair. Found her. Eh? Sarara. Arusama, forgive me for taking so long. Earlier this noon, after the first group of abductors were dealt by you, I expected this to happen sooner or later. Thus I had placed a small undetectable tracker on Kunuheim's nape. Unfortunately, the place they took her was making it hard for me to pin down her location, thus it took me so long to inform you of this. But now I know their exact location. I'm very sorry for not letting you know earlier. Relief flooded all over us, and I hugged Sarara, making her blush and smile in glee. Great job, Rara. Great job. I don't care that you didn't tell me about the tracker before, but now that you have, let's get a move on. Wait, lad. Where is she being held? Mount Heba. On the old border of Izumo Hoki border in Shimane. Of course it would be there. That's smart of them. Shimane is the one place in all of Japan that neither Yokai factions have any jurisdiction over. A purification barrier around the entire prefecture stops any attempts at teleporting in, and even if it wasn't there, we can't just carelessly barge our way in either. I knew that, but why's that? Never you mind, lad. You won't be able to sleep at night if you know. Hearing the grim tone underlining his voice and seeing Yasaka's paling face, I held back from asking more despite my rising curiosity. To make matters worse, they actually set up shop there of all places. They couldn't have picked a worse spot in all of Shimane if they tried. Again, why? Nararian sighed and looked at me grimly. Well, might as well tell you now instead of risking your curiosity getting the best of you. Listen, lad, you'll do good staying away from there. There is a cave named Yamatsu Hirosaka, the real entrance to Yomi, not the silly tourist attraction that the humans can enter. Ding hell. Of course they would set up shop there. Where else to extract the soul from if not the source of its current residence? Wait, Yomi as in? Otsurara. Yep, our very own version of hell, the place of eternal doom and gloom and misery, where all the dead of Japan, save for those of different faith, will end up in. Right, unlike most religions, Shinto didn't have different afterlives depending on the deeds committed in life, where the good go to paradise heaven and the sinners are condemned to purgatory hell. Many might believe that Takamagahara is heaven, but that place is the realm of gods, where gods and humans turned demigods reside in. Yomi is our final destination, and despite what Nararian said just now, it is neither hell nor heaven. Well, there is one possible good news. If they are going through the trouble of setting up the ritual right in front of Yamatsu Hirosaka, they must be using their own original ritual, and not one of the old ones. Meaning they will be treading very lightly to maximize the chances of the ritual's success. It might buy us time, if it hasn't already. Don't say it so cheerfully if you yourself don't believe in it, old man. To do what exactly? For all we know, the ritual might as well be nearing completion. Negotiating to allow our entrance into Izumo will take too long. And forcing our way in will only ensure the destruction of our factions. How can I possibly choose between my daughter and my subjects? Seeing Yasaka sink to her knees with despair plainly depicted on her face, I couldn't help but grimace. I'm sorry, Yasaka-chan. My eyes met those of Tsurara's, and I nodded, giving her the go-ahead to create a portal to Shimane. I don't know what's happening in Izumo, nor do I understand how you feel, as I'm neither a parent nor a leader. Seeing Yasaka and Nararian paying attention to me, I decided to do the most cringe-worthy thing in my life. Shitting out Shounen MC lines. But, I don't think you should be giving up so easily. If I were in your shoes, instead of agonizing over having to choose one over the other, I would fight to my last breath to save both. Seeing as Sarara is reaching completion to creating a portal to Shimane, I faced Nararian. From what you said, either of you going to Mount Heba will cause destruction to your factions, right? He nodded slowly, eyes widening as he realized my intentions. So it will be alright if a third party aligned with neither of your factions barge in and rescue Kuna, right? I shrugged and nodded at Sarara, manipulating space and time to rip open a hole in reality to directly lead us to Shimane to the closest possible point. So we are going, be back in a few. Why? Why are you going out of your way for someone you barely know? Erusama is extremely caring and overprotective of children, so no matter who they are, he will do his absolute best to look after them. I don't think that explains everything, young lady. I looked back at Yusaka over my shoulder and wondered how exactly I should answer her without cringing in the future looking back at this memory. I guess I'll pull an Ichigo Kurosaki here. Because it's the right thing to do. Sure, this is completely illogical as it's neither the safest, nor the wisest, nor the sanest thing to do, but as long as it's the right thing to do, there's no reason not to do it. I turned to fully face her and crossed my arms over my dot. And what about you? What are you going to do if you don't go? I couldn't help but sigh seeing how the indecision mar her features. I walked towards her and crouched to her level, looking her in the eye. Sitting here and crying about not being able to protect her will not help the situation at all. Following my instincts, I placed a hand on her shoulder. She's your daughter, you should be doing everything that you can to save her. If you go, you might be able to save her no matter how slim the chances are. But if you don't, she will die. I didn't yell nor glare at her. Ichigo Kurosaki would have been screaming her ears out, saying the same things in my place, expressing his compassion and inborn heroic nature. But I decided to take a soft approach. Bedding in her face, grabbing her by the lapels of her kimono and disregarding the inappropriateness of my actions will only mortify me in the future should Yusaka ever decide to talk about this incident to my kids. You're right, Harudono. I smiled seeing the determination in her eyes and helped her up. Kunu is my daughter and I will do anything to protect her, no matter the cost. Now, wait a minute. Nararian tried to grab Yusaka's attention, but unfortunately for him, the woman is currently in her own world now. And if my people are endangered by my actions, then I'll fight to the end to protect them as well. I won't choose one over the other. Hold on. I bit down on my to suppress my laughter, and from the corner of my eyes, I saw Sarara looking away with a hand covering her mouth as her shoulders shook. Nararian Dono, forgive me for being so selfish, but might I ask you to remain here until Harudono, Sarara Dono and I come back? Frustrated, a vein throbbed on his temple and Nararian threw his gnarled hands up into the air shouting, I said wait, you damn brats. I swear you will drive me to the grave. Ignoring my laughter, Nararian pointed a finger at Yusaka with his eyebrows twitching in annoyance. Have you already forgotten you cannot leave Kyoto? The only reason the ley lines beneath the city have remained stable despite humanity's unconstrained destruction of nature is because you are here regulating them. Do you know what will happen if you left for too long, or worse, died? Do you want the entire city and this realm to go up in flames? Yusaka's eyebrows shot upwards as if that thought just occurred to her. Oh. And you? Nararian pointed his finger in my direction as I steadied myself on my foot. Stop laughing. Why the hell are you telling her to go fetch her daughter, huh? Do you realize the hazard of her leaving this place? Of course I know that. Huh? But I couldn't just leave her in that state, could I? What if she became one of those dark and gloomy edgy characters in mangas? Yusaka and Nararian gawked at me. The country and this realm would be in ruins. Then I smirked in a battle-thirsty manner. Besides, I plan on redirecting Tamamo no Mei's soul from Kunu to their leader, that way I can test my mettle against her and have Sarara bring a safe and healthy Kunu back to you. I see this as an absolute win. After several seconds of dumbfounded silence, Nararian laughed hearing that. If that is the case, then steam poured out of him like All Might as his form shifted and grew taller, going from 3'5" to 6'3". Once the transformation was complete, a swipe of hand dispelled the smoke, revealing a young individual who is taller than me with long gold and black hair, likely covering his formerly bald elongated head. Allow me to join you. He said in a younger, deeper and a suave voice that definitely didn't suit his old age. Seeing that, I myself couldn't hold back my laugh and sent him a challenging look. Are your brittle bones capable of taking it? HMPH. Don't underestimate me. Then do try to keep up with us, old man. Boy brat, I should give a good beating with the flat side of my blade for being disrespectful like that. But, I suppose that stubbornness of yours is admirable in its own way. Mount Hiba is pretty far into the barrier and we don't have any time to waste. How do you propose we get there once we enter the barrier? 2 words. Cosmic velocity. What? Of course he won't know what that is. Wait. I cannot allow you to go. This is the Kyoto Yaokai's matter to handle. It's fine. I'm planning to cede my leadership of Hyaki Yaku and the Kanto Yaokai to my grandson Rikuo within this decade anyway, so if I'm going to go out, I might as well do it with a bang. But. Don't worry. In the worst case scenario, I'll claim to have been acting independently. I won't let any blame fall upon your faction or mine. And it's the duty of the older generation to protect and nurture the younger generation. He shrugged. I'm just fulfilling that duty. So you admit that you're old. Boy. Bear-sama. Very well. Then I leave Kunu to you three. I beg you, please save her. Don't worry, we'll bring her home safe and sound. Not sure about the geezer though. I'll show you geezer, you damn brat. Nana, an Anabi no Kitsune, just a few decades from obtaining her 8th tail, and the appointed high priestess of the Tamamo no Mae loyalists, is feeling a strong surge of satisfaction and anticipation as she watches her subordinates carefully place the last few remaining reagents on the altar in the specified locations. It has been a very long coming. They have experienced far too many setbacks, the foremost being their decimation at the hands of the Kyuubi clan and their allies. This ritual has taken them centuries of research to prepare and perfect, thanks to the destruction of the instructions for the already established rituals, further hampered by their need to lay low and avoid the watchful eyes of the two Yaokai factions all over Japan. It has only been recently that they have been able to gain a foothold in Shimane, and it is thanks to the passive nature of its ruler that they can take more conspicuous actions. And it has truly been a pain to acquire the final key ingredient, a Kyuubi. But they will soon bear witness the fruits of their labor. Tamamo no Mae will return in all her glory and usher them into an age of Yaokai supremacy. They will destroy the two Yaokai factions for their transgressions, oust the outsiders, the irksome Judeo-Christian faction that has the audacity to defile their homeland with their filthy presence, and deal with the meddlesome gods of Takamagahara before moving on to the foolish humans of Japan, as is their right as the rulers of the land of the rising sun. Just a little more. They are so very close. Nana-sama, all the reagents are in place. Said person snapped out of her daydream as one of her subordinates, a Rakubi no Kitsune, reported dutifully to her. Excellent. Everyone take your places. The ritual will now commence. Eagerness fills the air inside the cave as her 8 top subordinates take their places at the vertices of the altar while she stands in front of the black torii that marks the entrance to the Yomi. Let us begin. As one, the 9 Kitsunes begins chanting the incantation for the ritual. Pale blue balls of fire emerge from each reagent carefully placed on the altar. They converge on the tiny Kyuubi at the center, jolting her wide awake in the process rather painfully. Aya. The screams of the young girl echoes in the cave, reaching the clearing as the ritual begins to take its toll on the sacrifice. They are music to Nana's ears, the unbridled suffering of the bloodline that has killed her previous leader, her mother. If you wish to blame anyone for your misfortune, child, then blame your foolish mother for birthing you and giving us this long-awaited opportunity. She internally sneers even as she chants the incantation that she has long since memorized perfectly. And right in the middle of that is when everything starts to go wrong. Boo-om. Screams fill the air, a sonic boom taking place right above the cave they are carrying out the ritual in, destroying its ceiling, and one by one, each of her subordinates had their heads lobbed off before a blue blur slammed into the altar with a resounding force. A plume of dust and gravel erupted from the spot, the ceaseless screams of the young Kyuubi abruptly stopping, and Nana feels the Kai that had been gathering during the ritual dissipate. White-hot anger surged inside her. Who dares? That is all she managed to get out before something slams into her so hard, she felt a hole being punched through her abdomen before she is knocked off of her feet and sent flying into the cliff face behind her. Dazed and holed, she slumps to the ground, landing painfully, coughing and gurgling out blood, her abdomen owning a see-through hole, with cracks spreading all over her torso, originating from said hole. She barely managed to lift her head, peering through the blurry vision to catch sight of not one but 3 intruders conversing amongst themselves, while the one in the middle held on to the young Kyuubi. The first she recognized immediately, choking on her blood as she took in the distinctive appearance and the sheer presence that demands nothing less than absolute subservience. That can only be Nararian returned to his prime when he was the mightiest of all Yaokeis, so much so that her lady Tamamo no Mae seemed like a joke. She never imagined that the leader of the Hyaki Yaku and the Kanto Yaokai will come in person. She expected an army, yes, but not the one Yaokai army. The second is a young man with icy blue hair and eyes, wielding a black-bladed longsword in one hand, cradling the younger Kyuubi in the other. The third is a young woman in a furisude with blue hair mixed with highlights of black and white, having yellow eyes, holding her glowing hands over the younger Kyuubi. She does not know who the young couple are, but she can make an educated guess. Both of them are the reason of their first attempt at kidnapping the young Kyuubi being thwarted. She had received reports about that attempt failing due to the interference of an exceptionally strong human and his Yaokai companion, which had necessitated the unplanned but unexpectedly successful second attempt by her spies within the usurper's court. It has blown their cover irreparably, but they had achieved their penultimate objective, which was why she had no qualms about it, but now the ritual was ruined. The Noom. Oh? That one's still alive. The Katsu should have killed her on contact, but then again, she is an Anabi no Kitsune. The last thing Nana saw was the gleaming black blade before her head, similarly to her subordinates, was lobbed off. I scowled and gripped my sword tightly as Tsurara kept on pumping Kai into Kunu, who looked deathly pale with shallow breathing. Nararian had checked her condition before and with a grimace told us what happened. We were a little too late and the ritual was already underway. Most likely a portion of her essence, her very being was torn out of her in the process. Which meant that Kunu is dying, slowly but surely. Tsurara has been trying to prevent Kunu's death by trying her best to restore the lost essence with her own. But the problem is, Kunu's essence, the lost portion is in Yomi. And that place, while housing the souls of the departed, is also home to creatures that even Nararian, the one Yakai army, wouldn't even dream of crossing. And Yomi is so massive that it will be like looking for a needle in a haystack. I wanted to go inside Yomi and look for Kunu's lost essence, but both Tsurara and Nararian highly protested against it. I'm 3/4 human, and the moment I will step foot into Yomi is the exact same moment I will die, effectively making my efforts, no matter how little they were compared to Tsurara's, in this rescue attempt worthless. The only way I will survive in Yomi is if I have divinity in me, either by being a demigod or as a human blessed by a god. And I couldn't recklessly go into Yomi either. Tsurara, Satsura and Yukijai-san will never forgive me for it, should I end up dying there. Nararian's resigned sigh broke me out of my thoughts as the Yakai shook his head. We can't stay here for too long. The little one's dying and you're only delaying the inevitable like this. We may have failed in rescuing her alive, but the least we can do is make sure she dies peacefully by her mother's side. My shoulders sagged and I released a dejected sigh. Yeah, let's go then. Yasaka-sama's waiting. Sending back my sword to the pocket dimension, I scooped Kunu up in my arms, and just as the three of us are about to leave, an oppressive presence that screamed of divinity and death bore down on us. I don't know how I can tell its nature, but I didn't care about it as I draped myself over Kunu, Tsurara doing the same with me, pushing out her kai to repel and reduce the effect of that presence on us. What the hell is that? I hissed at Nararian, who replied to me in a strangled voice, looking incredibly nervous. Damn it. We're too late. She's already here. Who are you talking about, you dumbass? The source of the oppressive presence rapidly closed in on us, and once it is practically above us, I looked up from below Tsurara, just in time to see a beautiful young woman with long black hair set with an elaborate golden headpiece, red eyes, dressed in a ceremonial kimono, and 6 long golden skeletal artificial arms attached to her back descend down to us. I came here sensing the strange fluctuation of an energy signature, yet what do I find? One of Amaterasu's dogs along with 2 children. One of which is a dragon. Nararian immediately prostrated himself as low as he could get in a position of complete reverence, immensely surprising me. Idiot. Stop staring and bow. You're in the presence of Izanami no Makoto-sama. I gawked at that tidbit of info and looked back at the Shinto primordial goddess of creation and death. Ishibumi, that mother. I'll skin that piece of shit alive. Why didn't he involve the Shinto gods in the story? Hold up. I thought she is supposed to be trapped in Yomi looking like a skeleton with rotting flesh and maggots for eyes. Where did you read the last part? He asked in abject horror. Yes, she was trapped in Yomi, but then she became its queen and didn't have to play by its rules anymore. She left Yomi and entered the human realm. Amaterasu-sama permitted her to stay and gave her the entire Shimane prefecture on the condition that she didn't start killing humans and stayed within the barrier. So that is the reason Yasaka and he had been so apprehensive about coming here carelessly. Trespassing into the territory of a primordial goddess is pretty stupid after all. But Nararian mentioned that she is the effective ruler of Shimane, then that meant. I see anger surge to the surface again, and I growled, scaring the bound Tsurara and Nararian. So you're the one who let those idiots run around in here so freely. I brandished my sword with one hand, shrugging Tsurara off of me as I pointed my sword at her while cradling Kunu in my other arm. Stop, you idiot. Shimane might officially be Izanami-sama's territory, but she doesn't have any interest in ruling it and just leaves it to its own devices. That's just as bad. Because of her neglect, Kunu is dying. Kunu? Is that the name of your child that you're cradling? Tsurara and Nararian choked on their spit hearing that false assumption, one that I would learn about later, and gaped at her. I, not even thinking twice, nodded, shocking those two. She stepped toward me, and I pointed the tip of my sword, transforming into my dragon form and taking a defensive stance to protect Kunu from the line of fire. Peace, young dragon. I simply wish to observe your child's condition, she said, raising a pale dainty hand in a gesture of non-aggression. Yet look what happened to her due to your so-called observing. Nararian had an expression that screamed, dear God, why me? Any other time I would have laughed, but now is not the time. Izanami frowned. It seems that you do not trust me. Is my word that I will not harm a child insufficient? I didn't answer her, only tightening my grip on Kunu and narrowing my eyes at her. Very well. Then should I do anything untoward your child, you may cut me down. Is that enough for you? The fact that she offered her own life stunned me hard enough to regain my senses and cool down. Without reverting back into my human form, I loosened my grip on Kunu and lowered my sword that I doubt can kill her, a primordial goddess. Fine. But I'm watching you. Of course. She glided over to me and placed a hand on Kunu's forehead, furrowing her eyebrows as she probably did a scan of Kunu. I see. A portion of her essence has been torn away from her. What happened? Taking a deep breath to calm myself, I answered with suppressed anger. Those Tamamo loyalists happened, the idiots that you let run amok tried to use her as the sacrifice to resurrect Tamamo no Mae. I fearlessly glared right into her eyes, and action Izanami will never leave me down in our future interactions. She's in this condition because of you. She said nothing, only raising one of her long golden skeletal hands towards a black torii, and the cave entrance was suddenly filled with a dark mist, a golden ball of light shooting out from the mist into that waiting hand. And before I can react, she pressed the ball against Kunu's, melding it with her seamlessly. The result is immediate, Kunu's complexion improved and her breathing stabilized. Seeing what happened, I sighed in relief, and while I can connect the dots about what happened, I still asked what she did just now. I recalled her essence that was cast into Yomi. She will be fine now. I trust that we will have no further issues. Of course not, Izanami-sama. We thank you for your benevolence. Nararian immediately said, almost tripping over his own words. I nodded in agreement with him and gratefully looked at her. Thank you. No need for gratitude. I did not do this out of kindness, I simply wished to have Amaterasu indebted to me. Way to ruin the mood. Tsundere much. Izanami twitched and Nararian whined, looking ready to dig his own grave and jump right into it. Sarara is frozen still. HMPH. Now Began. Your business here has concluded. I will not tolerate your presence in my territory any longer. Yep, she's at Tsundere all right. I rolled my eyes and gestured Sarara to open a portal, who numbly opened a portal, giving me a look that screamed, we will be talking about manners with goddesses later. Of course, Izanami-sama. Alright, brat, no more shenanigans. We're getting out of here. Nararian said as he dragged me through the portal. I can walk by myself, you old man. Izanami silently watched from the corner of her eyes as Nararian dragged the young dragon father of the Kyuubi child by the collar of his shirt. The very same young dragon father who called her a skeleton with rotting flesh and maggots for eyes. The very same young dragon father who dared to talk back to her, a primordial goddess, as if she were any other normal person. Truly, his words were amusing to say the least. Her. A skeleton with rotting flesh and maggots for eyes. What a joke. As if that would ever happen. She will admit, his behavior and manner of speech was a nice change in pace. The way he bluntly called her at Tsundere was really amusing. But. She's in this condition because of you. His words had stung, even worse as they were more truthful than she cared to admit. Izanami would never allow a child to come to harm if she could help it, she was mother herself after all. Amaterasu, Tsukiyomi and Susanoo may not have been born out of her, but they are her late husband's children, that in extension, made them her own children too. Despite her uncaring cold attitude towards Amaterasu, she actually did care for the child and her siblings. However, it was also true that she had known of the loyalists settling in her territory and had not cared enough to do anything about it. As long as they did not threaten her personally, she was content to leave them be. If she had intervened before, then perhaps this wouldn't have happened. Maybe it was time for her to take a more active role in ruling Shimane. To think a boy's words would have such a strong impact on her, perhaps she was getting soft. But she was certain that boy would make things a lot more interesting in the future. And I cannot wait. With one last uncharacteristic giggle, Izanami vanished back into her palace in the depths of Yomi, finally after such a long time looking forward to the future. Perhaps she would keep an eye on the boy from time to time. Kunu doesn't know where she is. The last thing she recalls is suddenly being pulled out of her bed by one of her mother's attendants while she was asleep. And then pain, so much pain. After that, she found herself here, in this cold, dark void, floating without being able to move. Then, golden light flashed before her eyes, and the next thing she knows, she is waking up in the arms of someone. Where she weakly muttered, opening her eyes, looking through blurry vision that slowly started going away. Finally awake, Kunuheim. Kunu gasped, her blurry vision instantly clearing up to meet the blue eyes of her savior. Harudono. Yep, that's me alright. You've really caused us a lot of worry, little princess. And a few misunderstandings too. She craned her neck to meet the eyes of a yokai she doesn't recognize, but there is only one person who ever calls her that. Ararian Dono. In the flesh. How do you feel? Kunu snuggled into the of her savior and yawned. Tired. So tired. Her saviors vibrated as he gently spoke. Then go ahead and sleep more, Kunuheim. There is nothing more to worry about, the silly loyalists have been taken care of. The loyalists? Why are they being brought up? She put two and two together and realized that she has been saved again. Well, she hasn't seen it herself, she is absolutely certain, and thus, she can peacefully sleep in the arms of her hero. The moment we stepped out of the portal, I sensed something was wrong. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't expecting fanfare or anything, rather, the cries of relief from Yasaka on Kunu's safe return alive. But certainly not the dead silence that consumed the throne room. Yasaka is at the head of one of the two rows on either side of the throne there, leading what are most likely the leaders of the various other clans under her command, all prostrating themselves on the floor looking extremely cowed. She lifted her head just a little off the floor and caught sight of her daughter, sleeping peacefully in my arms. Joy and relief spread across her face, but she did not dare move an inch towards me. That's likely because of the person, no, the goddess languishing on Yasaka's throne. She is an incredibly beautiful woman with a body that surpassed Yasaka's own, long lustrous white hair tied in a bun, blood-red eyes, dressed in an elaborate and almost provocative red and white kimono with detached sleeves, adorned with a professionally crafted regalia. And I get this feeling that I know who she is considering how her immense presence is giving off the feeling of divinity and warmth that's akin to the sun. Nararian yelped from beside me and prostrated himself before her, and if Kunu was awake, she too would likely to be scrambling to do the same. The goddess rose from the throne with a smile and purposefully strode forwards, stopping a feet away from me. Greetings, Herr Hinode. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Amaterasu Amakami, and I thank you for rescuing our Kunu. I froze at the confirmation of my suspicion with an awkward smile on my face, while Tsurara behind me immediately prostrated herself. I am standing before the most important goddess in Shintoism, one who I've always wanted to meet. I really want to fanboy all over her, but that would be creepy, and I am not by any means, Izuku Midoriya. Isaka, Nararian and Sararakawa. Yumere eyes. The three of them immediately stood up ramrod straight, except Nararian hilariously poofed back into his old form right after standing up. Come and take your daughter to rest, I'm sure she needs it. She then looked at the rest and ordered, now, all of you, leave the room. I wish to have a word with the hero of the hour. Without hesitation, all of the yokai cleared out of the room. Isaka rushed forward and gingerly tried to take Kunu off of me, keyword being tried. No don twenning. Kunu incoherently mumbled in her sleep, tightening her grip on my shirt, swatting Yasaka in the face with her tail, surprising us and amusing Amaterasu. Isaka awkwardly looked at me and silently pleaded for help. How about I put her to bed and then continue this? Kunuheim doesn't seem that keen on letting me go. I asked the goddess politely. I hope you don't mind a bit of delay, Amaterasu-sama. The goddess of the sun and universe giggled and shook her head. No, please take your time doing your fatherly duties. Seeing the smug smile on her face, I realized that she knows everything that transpired in Shimane. Isaka blinked in confusion while I and Tsurara choked on our spit, Nararian looking to the side to hide his laughter. How? No. What are you talking about? Isaka looked between me and the mischievous sun goddess with an inquisitive look. Am I missing something? Amaterasu smiled at Nararian. Nura, would you kindly enlighten Yasaka? Seeing the smug look on the old man's face, I glared hard at him, daring him to speak, despite knowing that he will never choose me over her. Well, you see, Yasaka-chan, Izanami-sama had shown up at the end of our schism. Now, don't worry, she wasn't hostile to us, in fact she had a hand in Lil Princess's safe return. Is that so? Yup, and this lad over here got pissed, cause according to him, Izanami-sama was the reason Lil Princess was dying. Dying? Hush, let me finish. Anyway, the lad was all like this, he cleared his throat and imitated me. So you're the one who let those idiots run around in here so freely. Then he pulled out his sword from thin air and pointed it at her, and let me tell you, I thought we were gonna die cause of him. And then came the curveball. Izanami-sama asked, Kunu? Is that the name of your child that you're cradling? And he said yes. Tsurara facepalmed, Yasaka stared dumbfounded at me while Amaterasu and Nararian laughed. I quickly put a sound blocking spell on Kunu's ears and hissed at him. Like. I said. I didn't hear her call Kunu my